was reading the Daily Trojan one day and saw an ad in the newspaper saying walk-on tryouts for the 2006 USC football team coming up on such and such date. And then a few days later, a light bulb went off. Well, what if I went through the tryout myself? I could write about it from first-person perspective, go through it, and it would also be pretty funny too because I'm really skinny, I'm not very big, and I hadn't played football since 5th grade. I had covered the team for 3 years, and all of a sudden there I was trying to be on the team. It kind of clicked with all the coaches that were out there. The head coach, Coach Carroll, and all the assistants. It almost clicked for all of them at the same time. They all started screaming out, "There's the newspaper guy, there's the newspaper guy." And they were hooting and hollering, giving me a hard time, and go home. I started writing the story that night, and then the day after that, I get a phone call from a friend of mine, and she's like, "Well, you made it." And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, I was like, no way. I walked into Coach Carroll's office. Coach Carroll looked at me and said, "You can catch the ball, you're fast, you're on the team." Almost immediately after making the team, I realized that God had his hand on this and that he had something great in store. And I just felt the magnitude of it. Like, wow, I'm a part of something really, really special right now. And I can't wait to see what God has in store. It was almost immediate where I kind of developed just a care and a love and an interest in my teammates. I knew that I just felt this sense that God had me there to impact the people around me. My first thought, a couple weeks into being on the team was, okay, well, everyone on the team, we should start a Bible study for the team. This will be great. Everyone on the team can be invited to come, and maybe not everyone will come, probably not everyone will come, but it'll be really cool just to offer that and see how many guys will come. And I'm waiting in the meeting room for the time to come. The time comes, no one's there, and I'm just waiting. Okay, well, guys are gonna be late. A couple minutes pass, 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes pass, and no one shows up. So I was crushed, got a second wind. I was like, okay, well, God has something else. Like, that wasn't it. And I had an idea, well, let's start a prayer group for the team. And I was devastated. So, I mean, just ultimate discouragement. Just what am I here for, God? Mario Danello was our kicker and record-setting kicker. He was just so great, just such a good person. You felt warm and loved and welcomed when you were around Mario. Taylor Odegaard was our backup punter, and he and Mario Danello were best friends and really close. As we just finished our last regular season game of the year, very beginning of December, and I had a nudge on my heart just the first week of December that everyone on the team should get a Bible. And I was like, okay, well, I got to follow through on this. Like, maybe this is why God had me here. And so I reached out. My grandfather's in the Gideons. He helped me acquire 100 Bibles for the team and get that shipped out and get them a couple days before Christmas. I was like, okay, this will be a really cool Christmas present. And I put a note in every Bible, typed up note that said, "The greatest gift you'll ever receive, the gift of Jesus Christ. Merry Christmas." Bibles were waiting for everyone to show up. And this was why God had me here. I was just so certain. I was so ready to see God just reveal himself through this. And so I walk into the locker room, I open the door, and it was the total opposite. There were Bibles thrown across the floor, pages ripped out. The trash can was half full of Bibles. I mean, I went from so much excitement, so much anticipation, to just the lowest of lows. Because there I was, I had this vision, I had this hope that God was going to do something great here. I had this vision, this hope the whole time that God was going to do something great. And I just kept experiencing failure time after time after time. I can remember the day of the Rose Bowl like it was yesterday. I mean, it was just one of those picture-perfect days. It was January 1st, 2007. A few days after the game, after that Rose Bowl game, and I was at home, and I get a phone call from one of my teammates saying, "Hey, did you hear what happened to Mario? Mario Danello, our kicker." I was like, "No, what happened?" My first thought was maybe he won an award or something like that because he was just such an incredible kicker. And they're like, "Mario died." And it's the most shocking thing in the world to hear a friend of yours who's 21 years old, just a few days after the biggest game of our lives, he'd fallen off a cliff and died. A friend of mine, one of the closest friends I had on the team, was dead. And what made it even harder was that I'd spent a year with him and we'd become close friends. And from what I could tell, he wasn't a believer, but I'd never taken the opportunity to share my faith with him, to share anything about Jesus with him. 8 of our players carry his casket in. And I mean, they're just sobbing. And these are like the biggest, meanest guys you'll ever see. And here they are just sobbing as they're carrying in our teammate's casket. And I look and I see on top of the casket is the Bible that was in his locker that I had put there a week before. 3 years after my football experience, I moved to Seattle to work for Coach Caro with the Seahawks, and I want to get involved in something. So I get involved with Young Life on Mercer Island, and the first leader meeting of that year, getting to know all the other leaders there, and in walks through the front door Taylor Odegaard. He was on the team with me. He was our backup punter. I hadn't seen him since 3 years before at the funeral for Mario.
I just remember going to work out and coming back in the locker room, and Bibles were strewn all over the locker room. People were just throwing them everywhere. In college, I wasn't really following God as I closely wanted to. I hadn't found a church. I hadn't found good fellowship, and so I definitely drifted away in my faith, and it had been tough. Typically, we have a pretty strict don't be late to practice policy. So I was running out the door, and I felt like I was probably running a little bit behind. I don't think anyone was left in the locker room. And I started walking out the door, opened the door halfway, and I hear this voice around the corner say, "Anyone know how to read this thing?" And I kind of laughed at myself for a second and was about to just head out, and then I just kind of had this overwhelming sensation that I needed to stop. So I walked back around the corner and peeked, and there's my buddy Mario sitting in his locker with a Bible in his hands. And I kind of asked him, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, what is this thing? How do I read this thing?" Threw my pads down, and I said a little breath prayer to myself, and I said, "God, give me the words. I know this is going to be a big one." And I sat down next to him, and it'd been years since I'd witnessed to anybody. And I got to sit down and witness to my friend right there. Throughout that next few days, every time I looked over at Mario's locker, he was sitting there in half pads with a Bible in his hands reading. You could see in him this transformation. He was really, I think, absorbing what it is to be a Christian and what it is to know Jesus.
When Taylor was telling me this story, almost the first image that came to my mind was the image of the casket being carried in with the Bible on top. That Bible had saved his life, changed his life in the last week of his life. And there it was sitting on top of his casket, kind of as a crown, like he is God's and he's in heaven. And it all made sense at the end after hearing this story. Like, wow, God, you are amazing. You are unbelievable. You are so good. Habakkuk 1:5. Look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed. For I'm going to do something in your days that you would not believe, even if you were told. Look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed. We are amazed. Look what God did. He turned a skinny little guy who hadn't played football since 5th grade into a player on the #1 football team in the country. Be utterly amazed that he's going to turn all these discouragements, all these things that you think are failures, into a radiant expression of his work, his grace, his power, his love for all of us. Someone's going to die. You're going to be super discouraged. A couple years later, you're going to move to Seattle. You're going to hear this story that's going to change your life and change many people's lives. So look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed. For I'm going to do something in your days that you would not believe, even if you were told.